If you're trying to photograph anything at like 2 p.m., just don't. The light is so flat.
Yeah, just wait.
It's so bad.
Welcome to Nerdlandia.
Welcome to Nerdlandia, where we have entirely too many photos of our hyperfixations. I'm your host, Emily Case Buskirk, with an overabundance of cat photos stored on my phone. Today's episode features a fellow cat lover and one of my favorite photographers of all time, Liz McCue. She documents Midwest culture, often through landscape and portrait work. Last year, she expanded her horizons by taking on one of the nation's biggest bike events as a cyclist and photographer. We talk about that experience and how Liz documents the complexity of the Great Plains in her photos. She also provides a sneak peek into her next creative project, so stick around. Liz, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about photography stuff. I've been really excited to cover this topic, and you are an amazing guest for this.
Thank you for having me, Emily, and for saying such kind words about my photography.
Well, of course. To kick things off, when did you first pick up a camera?
Okay, so do you remember the old Kodak instant cameras? I mean, they're not old, they still exist. But every family vacation, my parents would get us one, my brother and I. I think it was mostly to keep us busy, to give us something to do. But that was when I was first oh, I like photography. The Kodak instant cameras. Or not instant, but the disposable film cameras.
Disposable cameras are great. My throwback with disposable cameras is middle school dances.
Yes. I know my parents kept all of that film, and it's somewhere in the house I grew up in. Yeah, so there are 8 million photos of chipmunks from when we went to Yellowstone.
Oh my gosh. I was going to ask, are there any photos that you remember from those experiences?
Yes. Definitely a lot of really, really crummy photos of geysers. I had no idea what rule of thirds was. I mean, everything is just center.
Wow, kid Liz didn't know what rule of thirds was yet. I can't believe that. Right? We also weren't able to look stuff up on the internet at that time. So
no, I had access to the elementary school encyclopedias.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I do remember we had a Nat Geo or Life magazine. Yeah. It was a Life photo book on our coffee table growing up. And I remember looking at that and being moved by the photos.
Yeah.
So that kind of inspired me to pick up a camera later.
That's awesome. When do you think you consider yourself a real photographer?
In college, just because I was starting to get some more paid assignments then. So then I was okay, well, I have to consider myself a real photographer because I'm getting paid to do this. So someone thinks my work is valuable. And it wasn't just our photography professor.
The capitalistic angle.
Mm-hmm.
What made you want to keep going with it then?
I think with photography, I really like the storytelling aspect of it and the impact that it has on other people. So on your viewers. I like seeing how other people interpret my photos. Sometimes it's wrong. I'm how did you get that? But that's okay. I really like the element of documenting something for the future and sharing stories that maybe haven't been shared previously or haven't been shown wider.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And it actually ties into something else I wanted to ask about, because we're talking about the fact of sharing stories that maybe other people hadn't seen. And I think that there is a lot of opportunity there, living in flyover country, to photograph these subjects and to show it in a different way than maybe what people expect. So what is it exactly for you that is inspiring about photographing the Great Plains?
I like the subtleties, especially in landscape photography. I mean, and you can have the very beautiful sunsets and whatnot. But yeah, I like finding the subtleties just in the changing colors over the seasons. And it just takes, I think, a different eye to really appreciate the landscape around us. And it is it's a lot more varied than I think people think.
Yes.
So you think of Nebraska and you're yeah, cornfields, cool. Have you gone north? Have you seen the sandhills? Have you seen the less hills in eastern Nebraska that are so verdant and tree covered? South and the southwest, there are canyons. they're small canyons. It's not like the Grand Canyon or anything, but they're still very cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, there's also Toadstool.
Yes, I was going to say there's
like
also Toadstool.
Yeah, like the very, very start of the Badlands that South Dakota is known for.
Absolutely. I'd also say this is probably just something I appreciate since I have lived in Nebraska most of my life, but I actually do love the color palette of winter in Nebraska. The light blue sky and kind of the dead grasses and maybe sometimes some snow that's sitting on the ground. I just really like that color story. It just speaks to me a lot, and it is definitely one of those quiet things, as you said, but it's something I really, really love.
Okay, but like, especially if you're photographing in black and white, like that striking difference between like your very yellow grasslands and whatnot and this very blue sky. I mean, put a red filter on that and you're like, ooh, that pops. Because I'm
totally
weird like that, and that's how I think.
As a photographer, have you thought about like what kinds of themes you strive to show in your work and how you bring them to life in a photograph?
Yeah. Early on in my photography, and I mean, like, still to a fair degree in my work now, especially my personal work, it was about identity. So, like, my identity, how I fit into this space in the Great Plains, how does that work? That was kind of a big part of, like, why I actually went to Hastings for college. Long story short, I'm adopted. So, a lot of my photographic journey has been exploring my own identity in connection with, like, my birth family, because I did have some knowledge about who they were and where they were from in the state, just growing up. And then like also my adoptive family, who are also like 4th generation Nebraskans, which is kind of bonkers. It's a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went to Hastings because my birth mother's family kind of grew up. She grew up around there.
So you're like sort of living your own life story, and you can like kind of weave it in with your biological family story.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I also wanted to talk about your documentation of the RAGBRAI event.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Let's talk about bikes.
For listeners, RAGBRAI is a huge bike event that happens every July in Iowa. Cyclists take over the roads and they bike, 50 to 100 miles every day for a week? Is that the right mileage amount?
Yeah.
So last year, you got to photograph the 50th anniversary and also attend it as a cyclist for the first time. So yeah, I'd just love to hear more about that. And also just sort of your documentation and editing strategy for the photo stories that you produced.
I wish it had been more strategic, to be honest. On the front end, it was very strategic. But then like once I got back, I was like, I am exhausted. And then going back, like I didn't give myself any break time between like, okay, we finished RAGBRAI and now I'm going back to work. I should have like given myself more time for editing, because it took me months to get through the thousands of photos that I took.
Yeah, understandably.
Mm-hmm. I made some connections with other like cyclists throughout the ride, and several of them were like, hey, so did you ever like write an article about this? I was like, no, I did not. I just got through editing photos. And part of that was just like the months like after RAGBRAI just like got really, really hard for me personally. My boss left. I had 2 grandparents pass away. So I was like, you know what? I'm giving myself a break. If I'm just getting photos edited, like that is good enough.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the thing about RAGBRAI and like especially like the 50th anniversary. So like I'd never done it before, didn't really know what to expect. Like especially for last year, like just the crush of people was overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I am definitely a person who does not recover my energy around people. I need to be like by myself.
Right.
When like
Same.
You're going for like a week straight just in this crush of people, even though like it was so cool like as a cyclist to like own an entire highway.
Oh yeah.
Like that's so cool. The cars have to wait for you for once.
My dream.
Mm-hmm. But then it's also just like being on all the time and being social.
And just not getting like that social battery recharge that is necessary for us introverts.
I know this is probably how we're going to do it again this year, but like last year there were 3 of us. So it was my husband and I, and then his best friend Q. After a week of like riding together, like also a good friend. Very much a good friend. So yeah.
The true friendship test.
Honestly, like, can you ride however many miles together? Okay, cool. Yeah, pass the test. Everyone's very, very friendly on the ride. So you do, like, you're able to kind of like make friends. And that was fun, actually, like, because I had my camera with me basically at all times. I was wandering around, I think it was like Storm Lake, and this woman comes up to me and she's like, "Are you with the New York Times?" And I'm like, "I am in fact not."
Oh my gosh.
But thank you.
Love that. Thank you for assuming that, ma'am.
Right. And she's like, "Oh, well, who are you photographing for?" And I'm like, "Myself. I'm going to pitch these photos later." And she's like, "Oh, that's so cool." I was like, "Thank you, random woman. You've just given me a boost of confidence."
Oh my gosh, yes. The camaraderie of those kinds of events is just next level.
But yeah, I mean, like, I took this like little tiny camera with me. It's a Sony 7C. It's a smaller camera. Like, it doesn't look like a big pro camera, but it's still full frame. So I thought that was funny. That she's like, "You must be a professional because you're carrying a camera." I'm like, okay.
You know, when everybody just takes photos from their phone, then I guess it checks out.
Truth.
And that's a mirrorless camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you've like shot with it for a little while. What's your like take on it? How's your experience been?
I love it. I love it so much. I've shot with Canon cameras for the last 10 years, and I still love my 5D Mark IV. There are definitely times where I'm like, I need my Canon. But for a lot of my on-the-go photography, I do find myself picking up my 7C a lot more often.
Yeah.
I mean, especially for like cycling. I debated a long time between like a couple different cameras. So it was like this, and then there was a Fujifilm that I was looking at. And like even some like more like the rugged types of cameras, like I think there was like an Olympus or something, or Panasonic. I don't remember which brand it was, but it was like supposed to be like can withstand extreme temperatures, or like can be dropped from like 10 feet or something and won't shatter. So I did think about that a lot of like, I am going to be out in the elements of Iowa for hours at a time. And yeah, thinking about like the temperature was something that I definitely kept in mind, because I knew from like photographing on like the Platte River some like one summer in college that like my Canon was just like overheating quickly in 90-degree full sun temperatures.
Oh, totally. Especially when there's like no shade and you're out there for hours. Like that's definitely a consideration.
Yeah.
And also that week, Iowa had basically a record heat wave going on. So I'm sure that was fun as a cyclist and photographer.
Yeah. Definitely, like, I think it was the 6th day that was rough. I was stopping probably every 5 miles to refill water and just take a break because it was so hot.
Yeah.
Bless up to all the farmers who were like, "Yeah, of course you can just like spend a couple minutes in our yards. We have trees."
Oh, that's so nice.
Okay, honestly, yeah.
It does sound like that camera is just like an incredible adventure camera. And so paint a picture here of what bag did you use for your handlebars or for your bike frame? Was there plenty of room for snacks? Like, what was that situation?
I spent so much time trying to figure out like that system for myself. What bag would I use, and like where would I put it? So I looked at some frame bags, but I was like, I don't want to sacrifice like space for water bottles. So I ended up with a handlebar bag. And I got like a little chrome bag.
Nice.
And it just sits on my handlebars. I put some photo like padding in it, so it gave like some insulation to the camera. And I kind of tested it beforehand, so like I felt like the camera wasn't really like jostling around a whole lot. It felt very stable. I knew like if I went down, the bag wasn't going to fall off. It was protected by the handlebars, so like it wasn't going to hit the ground unless something extremely catastrophic happened.
Right.
So it worked. Also, like that bag, it becomes a crossbody bag, so I could take it off my bike.
Oh, nice.
So if I was just spending the day driving or whatnot, then it could just follow me.
Love that. So was it awkward trying to like straddle the line between being a participant and being a documentarian? What was that experience like, and how did you balance those roles?
Definitely toward the beginning of the week, I think I did a lot better job of like balancing the roles. I had a lot more like mental energy just to be like, okay, now I am photographer. Like toward the end of the week, like it just got so hot and the miles were a lot longer. So toward the end of the week, I was kind of like, wasn't really quite as there mentally to be a documentarian. I didn't do a lot of interviewing by then. Mostly it was more like memory photos of what's happening on the ride. And I know, like, also some of those days, it was just because it was so hot, like, I just needed so many breaks. And it took a lot longer for us to like complete the route. So there were a lot of times where Michael was like, we need to go. And I'm like, I want one more photo. I haven't gotten the photo yet.
Well, that's what he signed up for when he married you. So sorry, Michael.
Yeah, sorry, Michael. But this year, I'm like, okay, we're going to do more training so that I am in a little bit better shape before going on the ride. So I can have a little more mental energy to do photography. Year 2 of it, I have a better idea of like what the ride looks like. So last year was like historically significant because it was the 50th. But now this year, I think I'll get to see like more of the folks who like do it regularly, who like complete this tens of times, who've done it for decades or whatnot.
Yeah.
Those are some of the stories that I kind of want to share. And also like the folks who are new, like who is joining it now and who is able to join it. Because I know like taking a week off of work to ride across Iowa is not always accessible for a lot of people.
Yes.
Cost-wise, work-wise, fitness-wise. Also, like, cycling isn't always the most inclusive to begin with because bikes are spendy, or they can be spendy.
It can be prohibitively expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So how many people do participate? Because I can't remember the numbers. It's crazy.
I think last year, like, the unofficial count was somewhere around 70,000 on like the ride through Des Moines, that's a lot of people.
That is a lot to picture.
It's really cool to like come to the top of a hill and you just see like lines of cyclists for the next however many miles that you can see over this hill.
That is incredible.
But that was, and then just to kind of realize that you're like, oh, I'm in the very middle of this pack.
It's honestly super impressive that you decided to participate in RAGBRAI for the first time, firstly, and then also, to commit to doing both of those things, because it sounds like a whole lot to take on. And so I think you did a great job of juggling everything.
Thank you.
So are there any other lessons from the first year of RAGBRAI for you that you are going to take into this year's event?
Definitely training ahead of time. And I think that extends like just beyond like getting miles on the bike. That's like mental training.
Oh,
or maybe
totally.
Just like preparing myself a little bit more ahead of time. So like the week before I was super stressed from like work. So I went into RAGBRAI like wanting a vacation and then like not really getting a vacation. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, it would not be restful. It's an adventure.
Yeah. And then I went right back into work. Yeah, I think like giving myself more breaks ahead of then is good. And I've already like run my vacation by my boss. I'm like, hey, so I'm taking these like this series of random Wednesdays off so I can go on a bike ride.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Glad you're planning ahead and setting aside some breaks for yourself.
I was looking at my camera again, and I don't think I mentioned it, but like I chose a prime lens for this camera instead of a zoom lens, which was also an interesting challenge because I'd never done that before. Like my Canon camera has two lenses. One's a 24-70 and then the other is a 70-200, like, which is pretty standard, like photojournalist kit.
Yeah.
This one I chose a 40mm prime and it was fun. It has been fun since also because like I haven't gotten any other lenses, but it was just like a great little challenge for myself to kind of figure out like how do I make photos with just this lens.
It's kind of like forcing creativity by imposing constraint.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, not being able to zoom is definitely one of those constraints.
It was like, how do I get these photos and how do I frame them? But also like I had to get close. So I couldn't just be like a distance away from people. Like I had to go and talk to people. That's probably another reason why I was like, I'm exhausted by the end of this week.
Are there any photos that you were like particularly proud of or that stood out among the pack for you?
I really like this one of two cyclists. Pie is a big deal for RAGBRAI.
Yes.
Calorie dense, it's sweet, it gives you a lot of energy to get back on the bike. So there were a couple of cyclists who had decorated their helmets with pie.
Love that.
This photo of them. Like I could not find them again in this crowd to be like, I want to talk to you about your helmets. Like, how did you make them? Couldn't do that. But I just saw them and I was like, this is so fun. And a lot of the helmet decorations and the costumes were pretty fun too.
That's awesome. I do feel like that
Yeah.
sums it up very well. Pie is also an amazing mood boost. Like, honestly, I've been on so many bike trips where food is the only thing keeping me going.
It is so true. Like, you asked about like how I packed snacks and everything. And I think I just stuck like a Cliff Bar and some like energy chews in my cycling
Oh, in your jersey, yeah.
jersey.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Whenever I've tried to put a granola bar on my jersey, then it just gets all like
Weird.
warm and mushy.
Yes.
Ugh. But I
So
mean,
it's the last resort Cliff Bar.
yes, that's always. I can't remember the term I've used, but it's just like desperation granola bar is like basically what it is. But you gotta have it. You gotta have that backup plan.
Yes.
Are there any other upcoming projects that you're excited about?
I have a couple pieces that I'm kind of working on. I just need to like pitch them and figure out the place to pitch them. My younger brother kind of like helped me find this idea because like we were going through recipes, my grandmother's recipes. So I don't know if you're familiar with like the little like recipe cards that like pre Bon Appetit, pre like New York Times Cooking or anything, like pre any like online recipe databases.
Yes.
So my grandparents would just like exchange recipe cards for things with their friends and neighbors and whatnot. So I got their recipe boxes, both my maternal grandmother and paternal grandmother's. And some of those recipes are just bonkers.
Okay.
Yes. The tomato, celery, and carrot aspect Jello salads.
Okay, you lost me at celery, and then you said aspic.
Jello
and I was
salad.
like, oh boy, that's a lot.
It's a lot. But I kind of want to go through like their recipe boxes and just like choose a couple to kind of show that this relationship that I had with like my grandmother's and food.
Yeah.
For both of them, really. Like, so much of my fond memories are like around food and specifically sweets.
Totally.
So like tea time with my grandma Virginia, and we'd have like shortbread cookies and brownies and whatnot. And then like my grandma Gert would always make cookies. You know, like there was a cookie jar and this chocolate roll-up cake.
Ooh, oh yeah, I love like rolled cakes.
So I don't know, I kind of just want to like do like a photo essay type of thing with like their recipes and the ones that are meaningful to me and just like showing, you know, like that intergenerational relationship.
I love that. So when you say photo essay, are you thinking about like photographing somebody making these recipes? Are you just photographing while you're like, I'm just trying to picture what you're planning, how you're planning to approach this.
I am thinking of making the recipes myself. So maybe on some of the days off that I have, it's like making a recipe and like photographing them. So the recipe card, because like to me, like those handwritten cards are just really cool.
Yes, they are.
So that kind of like juxtaposition of the handwritten card and like whatever recipe that I've made. So like it's got my input, establishing that connection between like me and my grandmother's.
Absolutely. I mean, because you're participating in this food tradition, but then you're also bringing your own ideas and preferences to it. So I love that. And then you're photographing it, which is the most Liz McCue thing of all.
Can I take pictures
Yay.
of food? Let's go.
That's going to be so cool.
And it'll be an interesting challenge for me too, I think, just to kind of photograph food in a way that makes it look mostly good. I mean, like, I don't think I'm going to do like the whole like put glue on it to make it look shiny trick. But like if I take something out of the oven, like am I able to capture like steam coming from it? Or is this, I mean, if it's more like documentary and like photojournalism, like I can't just add that in post.
Right. You kind of have to capture what's actually happening. So to you, when it comes to artistic photography, especially, or even photojournalistic work, what gives a photo a life? Because I think there's so many photos taken, and some of them only kind of have a lifespan of maybe a few seconds, a few days, or a few months. But then there's photos that transcend that and can last through years or even decades. What are your thoughts on what makes a photo rise to that status?
I don't know. I think that's just a really challenging question. I don't know. Like for me, it feels very personal. So for the photos that I go back to from like my own collection, a lot of them have like some emotional tie. Like you can say that like a photograph has life because it's met all of like the technical capabilities. You know, like you've got your framing correct and like you've got a bunch of layers and whatnot, or like use of color and light. Those all come together to like give a photograph life. And then for me, it's also like that emotional element. I have one photo of my grandpa, just like of his hands. And that is one of my favorite photographs. I don't know where like the film is, but it's a film photo. It's black and white. And it's just a little like 4x6 photo. It has like some really high contrast light. And it's just his hand holding a drink glass. Like, it's not well framed at all. There's like some random like popcorn boat in the back just hanging out there. But I don't know, it just like makes me feel like that's him.
Yeah.
That's the photo of my grandpa.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks to the power of an image where you can't necessarily put things in words sometimes of what the human experience is like and how we perceive life. But you see this photo of your grandpa's hands and you're instantly transported to one moment in existence.
Yeah. I've got like a kind of a similar photo of my dad. It's like one of the first portraits that I made of him. I think really one of the only portraits I've made of him. He was in his office at work, and like the contrast isn't great. Like, it's still another like black and white film photo, but he's just like there. He's not paying attention to me, and he's on a phone call. Like, I framed it so like he's super low in the image, and like the rest of the image is his office.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just like, it feels like a scene, and I like that he's not paying attention to me.
You just got to capture him in his element.
Yes. I shared it with another photographer, and they're like, this is crap. I'm like, I'm going to think what I think about it. So, okay.
Your opinion is irrelevant here.
Mm-hmm. I think about that a lot in photography too, like how other people perceive my images. As an artist, like, you just have to get over it at some point and just be like, I am okay with people viewing my photos.
Yeah.
I just need to like share them. So some people are going to dislike them, and that is okay.
Good reminder always. It's terrifying.
Right?
You just do it anyway, but the doubt, the voice like never goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the imposter syndrome and like the self-doubt is just constant.
Uh-huh.
I know, like, when you wrote that question about like how do you put life into photographs, you called out one of my photographs with like the church, and it's framed in like a swing set. And I really like that you called that one out in particular. Like, thank you. That's one of those photographs that I think a lot of people don't understand my intent behind it, where a lot of people just see like, oh, pretty church. And I'm like, is it? I've never gone to this church. I've never attended a sermon at this church or whatnot. But I mean, I called it like, it's titled This I Know. Going back to Bible study and whatnot, like as a very like tiny child, it never spoke to me, I think, in a way that it did for like other kids. I always have interpreted church and the Bible as like storytelling. I don't know, that photograph was kind of just me exploring, like the influence of religion on children, specifically like in Nebraska, in the Great Plains. Like, there is a lot of emphasis on religion, specifically Christianity.
Yeah. So when you tell it This I Know, it seems that the implicit question that you pose after that is like, but how do you know? Or like, what was your thought?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just like literally asking because I never got to ask you about that before. So to wrap things up, I wanted to dive into a line from your bio that intrigued me. You say that you're notoriously bad at holding up road trips because you saw a photo opportunity out of nowhere. Are there any examples of that you wanted to share?
There are some trips where like we just kind of know that like it's going to happen. You know that like we need to build in extra time because I'm going to see something.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you did also kind of like touch on that earlier when you're talking about trying to get going again on the RAGBRAI route, but photos need to happen first.
Yeah, that might be it. That might be like I want one more photo, or like I haven't found the photo yet. Like, yeah, I think RAGBRAI might be the one the one situation where I'm like, yes, I am being the holdup here. It is me. I'm the problem.
Oh, well, you'll never get the chance to take that photo again. So
exactly. please understand this, that like, if I don't get the photo now, it's never going to happen again. And then I'll just have that regret for the rest of my life.
The most haunting thing you could have as a photographer.
I know. And there have been like some times where like I have like driven past a building on like my way to work and I'm like, oh, that building's really cool. Like I want to photograph it. And like, I just need like the proper lighting or whatnot. Yeah. Like after a while, then you drive past it again and you're like, well, shoot, the building's gone. And now I can't photograph it anymore.
So basically the moral of this story is it's okay to be late to work.
Yeah.
Take the time.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully my boss isn't listening to this. That is the fun and like the challenge of being a photographer, is that like you can always find something is always interesting to photograph. And it's never going to be it's not always going to be convenient. Like when you have that inspiration.
Oh, 100%.
Sometimes too, like I will like make a stop and photograph something and like not be happy with it and know that like I have to come back at a different time. So bless up to Google Maps. I just drop a pin and I'm like, all right, we got to come back here. So now I have a lot of pins dropped across Iowa.
I love that. The ongoing process of capturing the Great Plains.
Yes.
So that leads us into our recurring ending segment. What is your favorite thing in the moment?
That's a really good question. Cheese and crackers.
Yes. Here for it.
It's been so great just to have some nights where I'm like, okay, Michael, we're eating cheese and we're eating crackers. Maybe like if we're feeling bougie, like we can go like full charcuterie and like get some sliced sausage or something, or pickles.
And I love the cheese that you dropped off for us for the holidays. I mean, that's truly the perfect gift right there.
Good. I'm glad you liked it.
It was like crackers that were so fancy, like I wouldn't think to buy them for myself.
Honestly, like that is my splurge, is like nice crackers. Do I have like some decent crackers and like some decent coffee?
Oh, yes. Always coffee. Coffee is always worth the splurge.
I always like justify it to myself of like, well, if I buy myself some nice coffee that I can make at home, then I'm not buying coffee when I'm out.
Exactly. Yeah, Jared is the coffee maker in the house. And so, yes, we splurge on more expensive beans, but then I'm not stopping by a coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
My current favorite thing kind of just came back into my life yesterday, and it's my love of symphonic band. I played in a symphonic band for years, and yesterday I got to go to a concert that the local college had. It was so good. They had 2 world premiere performances of some like original compositions, and I got to experience this for free. They didn't charge a ticket price for this. Like the quality of music I experienced was just insane. And it was like, yeah, we're just letting people in to come see this because we want to share this music because we love it. And it just blew my mind.
That's awesome.
I will always love instrumental, especially symphonic band music. So yeah, I guess it's just one of those things that I don't think it's ever going to really leave my life.
I feel that. So Emily, thank you so much for having me here today and for inviting me on your podcast. I feel very honored.
Oh, thank you so much, Liz. And thanks for starting the sign off. Guest has not done that yet, so you were just super motivated.
Sorry.
No, I love it.
Throw back to the time when I did radio.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for joining and talking about your photo work. And I just can't wait to see your upcoming assignments, whether that's RAGBRAI Part 2 or your food project.
Thank you, Emily.
I had so much fun talking cameras, bikes, and coffee with Liz. It was super interesting to learn how she uses photography to connect with both her biological and adoptive families. At the upcoming RAGBRAI event this summer, I hope she gets to chase down all the stray pins she left on Google Maps. Can't wait to see those photos. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow the show through whatever platform you're listening on right now. That way you won't miss any new episodes. Next time on Nerdlandia, piecing together stories, word by word and stitch by stitch. Eddie is a writer, community leader for National Novel Writing Month, and cross-stitcher. We talk about creating fictional worlds, their favorite nerdy inspirations for cross-stitch patterns, and providing self-care through creative journaling practices. Check out that episode on April 17th. Nerdlandia is hosted, produced, and edited by Emily Case Buskirk. Theme song and ending music by Keith West. Cover art by Ellen Stubbings. Additional music by Dennis Brodowski and No Cap XL from Pixabay. Party on!
The very beautiful sunsets and whatnot, like the very striking, like greens. No, greens don't happen in sunsets.